And good morning, everybody. I hope you're all having a fantastic weekend. So the topic of the day. But before I get to that, I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Wadjuk. I'm really sorry, the Wadjuk Noongar peoples. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to Aboriginal elders and peoples from other communities who may be taking part in this live stream today. So, hang on, I have to bring up Mitchell's text-to-speech because I failed to do that beforehand. Oh, I've just got a bad gateway error. Oh no! What's going on? Looks like it might not be up and running. Possibly. I'm just going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. So, good morning. John Whips, Mr. Fixit, Stephen W. Amanda is here. Also, Amanda, thank you for sharing the post about the live stream. For the last couple of weeks, when the stream has gone up on YouTube, Amanda has provided a link to that. Basically, she's posted about it on Facebook. I really appreciate that. That's cool. Yeah, Crispian is here. Says, I'm super not supper, but supper is good. Where are we? Where am I up to? The Lane, Sion, David, Stephen George. Good morning, Stephen. Some call it fun. Kim S, Russell Rainey, Sharky, Scott Miller, Intermittent Tech. Intermittent! Welcome. Johnny Bergdahl. Imi is here. Jax Tech, Trady Trev, Tabraz is here. Austin is here. Just 3D modeling in the background. What are you making, Austin? What are you making? It's always something interesting. So I actually had a few things that I was wanting to talk about today. Oh, what's this? My chair is knocking against. Can I lower that arm? The arm of my chair. Don't know. I don't think it goes any lower. The arm of my chair is knocking against the workbench and getting in the way. What did I just do with the chat? I pushed it into the background. Curtis is here as well. Good morning or afternoon, evening. Good evening for you. So, Austin is 3D printing an overcomplication argument. Oh, Austin says it's a multi-port RJ45 tester. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, Scott Miller isn't wrong. Not Scott said it was an overcomplication argument. Gavin, good morning. Where was I? That's right. So there were a few things that I was wanting to talk about today. And we might get to some of these. I think we probably will, because I don't have that much to say about the Open Home Foundation. It's still very early. It's a lot of speculation. During the week, a couple of things. Okay, so there is one thing that is kind of cool, but I don't know enough about it yet to really talk about it. This is a test unit of the Drop Bear, which is the Speeduino. Oops, I should slide across here. This is the Speeduino, which is the open source ECU project that has been around for many, many years now, and started by Josh in Ballarat. And yeah, it's an Arduino based, although these days it uses a Teensy. So this actual board is the Drop Bear 2 beta. So Josh Stewart designed the original one based around I think it was a 328p, so classic Arduino sort of architecture, and many years ago, and then it's been iterating on it ever since. Then it switched to a Teensy, I think it might have been a Teensy 3.5 or something, for the updated version of the Drop Bear, and the Teensy 3.5 is out of production. So this is the new design that is about to go into production And this is basically like a test run. So you can see on the silk screen it's got Drop Bear 2 beta for Teensy 4.1. And so my son Tom and I are going to try retrofitting this into his Honda Civic. So that's going to be a fun project. So we're going to figure out how to replace the factory ECU with this open source ECU, which looks amazing. Anyway, I could get into this subject. My whole point of showing this is just one of the things that I was wanting to talk about today, but I'm not. So that's a tease for a future day. What else was there? Oh, Stephen says, I thought it used the Mega 2560. Yes, I think you're right. I think you're right. The very first version of the Speeduino was based on an AT Mega 2560. I think it used an Arduino Mega internally. Oh, a few more good mornings. Jack, AF5IX is here. Jordan Reese is here. David Crisp. Yep. Oh, Johnny asked, where does the USB cable go? It goes into the Teensy, which is the microcontroller module that plugs in on that carrier board. And then it goes through to the external, if I just take this cover off. So this is a like a weatherproof USB connector. You undo the cover and there's a USB socket there. All this does is take an external weatherproof socket and bring it through onto a flying lead, which plugs into the Teensy, which goes in here. So the Teensy, which is not there right now, it's not plugged in, is the brains of it. That's what runs the code, and then everything else on this PCB is I/O, like sensors and drivers for injectors and all of that sort of thing. So, and there's a spot here for a module, which is going to have an ESP32 on it, so that the idea is that perhaps in the future it can have a self-hosted web interface. And it's got CAN bus and all those good things. So yeah, this plugs in, and that is just so that you can plug in your computer externally for programming and tuning. So yeah, that's all that is. Speeduino. Okay, but that was not my point. The other thing I was going to talk about, and we'll probably get to, is that during the week, John Boxall posted on Facebook about Element 14 having a special on programmable loads, and it looks ideal to integrate with my test rig setup for doing automated testing of things like motor drivers. So what we could do is send a command to the programmable load and tell it to draw a certain amount of current, and then test that your motor driver can really do that. So I immediately ordered one because they were really cheap, and they didn't have many left. Dodgy! Good morning, Dodgy. Oh, hang on. What's going on here? I'm getting messages about Deadstream. Deadstream. It says I'm on air, and that is weird. Yeah, okay. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe I have been abducted by aliens. Just click the like button. Okay, that is odd. Yeah, so I don't know why there was an interruption in the stream there, but it looks like it's all still okay, I hope. All right, so, good. Intermittent, you're back. Refresh fixed it. Yeah, where was I? Oh yeah, so I ordered one. Now, you know that my week has been busy. When I received a new piece of test gear, it arrived on my door, I think, when would it have been? I think John posted about it on Tuesday. I ordered it Tuesday night. It arrived Thursday morning, like first thing, and it's been sitting in the box just inside the front door waiting for me to open it ever since. So yes, new piece of test gear sitting there in the box, and I haven't even opened the box. So that just shows where things are at right now. Right. But then this morning I woke up. I did the usual thing of opening my eyes, well, not even opening my eyes, reached over, grabbed my phone, then opened my eyes and looked at it and saw Home Assistant announces. So, yeah, Johnny says, stream is A-OK in Sweden. This is totally the opposite side of the world, so call your local ISP support. Yep. Well, Johnny, it's just you and me now. Just you and me. So, where are we going? Okay, now, what I saw was a link to a number of stories. So a few people have been reporting on this. This is an article in The Verge, and what I'm going to do is drop this into the chat. Amanda, you're back. Excellent. We shall continue. And normal programming resumes. So, yeah, a few outlets have been reporting that that the Open Home Foundation, this thing right here, oink, has been created, and I want to talk about that just for a moment. It's worth reading this article. I'm probably going to kind of take my time and go through it a little bit and address some of the things that you've got in it. Crispian says, you got support. So this is in relation to Johnny saying to contact your ISP for support. Yes, ISP support in Sweden is excellent. I hear that everything in Sweden is excellent. Maybe I should go to Sweden. Now, oh yes, that reminds me. Hang on, all right, this is the first squirrel of the day. No, it's not the first squirrel. I've already had 2 squirrels. I've briefly talked about Josh's Open ECU project, Speedwindow. I've talked about loads, XKCD, what was the thing I was looking for? Sorry, I'm just looking for no, I don't know. I don't know XKCD. I don't know CD. Oh, here we go. This is it. This is it. This is the one I'm looking for. So, you know, can I zoom in on this? Yeah, this is classic. This is one of those things that when I first started using Unix-like systems, including Linux and BSD and those sorts of things, is this message when you try to do something you're not allowed to do, and it'll say something like, RobM is not in the sudoers file. This incident will be reported. And I have often wondered, in the early days, I wondered, where does this stuff get reported to? So yeah, you end up on Sanders' naughty list if you do something you shouldn't on a Unix system. It was only later that I discovered that these things were going to the being reported in syslog and in some cases email to the administrator, that sort of thing. The administrator being me. So reporting to yourself. Yeah, Scott says it always reports my mistakes to me. Exactly. Proof of life. Sorry, Amanda, I can't do that. Bionic Chaos. G'day, and Alistair, good morning. So, Alistair being here is very relevant because some years ago, Alistair ran an introduction to Home Assistant tutorial at linux.conf.au, which I participated in, and I still have here. I have in my storage system, with all of the boxes and things that I've got out there, I have a box with a label on it that says Alistair's Home Assistant Tutorial, and it's got all the stuff in it from that tutorial. Yeah. Yeah. Sion and Mitchell, you're not too happy with your bosses. Yeah, I'm not too happy with my boss either. My boss is a bit of an idiot. Okay, so back to the topic of the day. So what this announcement basically says, in short, is that Paulus Schertzen from the Home Assistant project has announced the creation of the Open Home Foundation, which is interesting wording. Okay, so this is kind of backwards speak. It's weird. It says, this week, Home Assistant announced it is now part of the Open Home Foundation. So that sounds like, ooh, the Open Home Foundation existed and we have joined it, which is kind of technically true, but like they created it. So one of the reasons that I am drawing attention to this wording is that it has significance in terms of the context of other open source projects. Okay, now let me just back up a little bit. I will try to give the very brief summary. For those of you who don't know, playing along at home, Home Assistant is an open source project to build a home automation hub/framework. It's primarily a software project which provides software that integrates many different devices and then gives you several different options for user interfaces. So it's like it's basically the glue that pulls lots of things together. It's equivalent to, what would it be equivalent to? Many things. Well, there have been a few projects over the years, but Home Assistant is the biggest, I think. I'm pretty sure, by whatever metric you want. Open voice chat. What is voice chat? Oh, okay, it's running. Cool. Thank you, Mitchell. Hang on, wrong screen. I'm just going to bring that down off there. Mitchell, we'll see if it's working now. Aha, looks like it is. Go to live. Loading. Activate.
System connected. Activating the super house.
That's
Squirrel.
it. Nice. Okay, thanks, Mitchell. That's really cool. So if anybody was doing say messages, now they should work. It is Sunday. Right. Okay. You work till after 2 a.m, Mitchell. What is going on? All right.
Unexpected Maker says at Johnny Bergdahl, it is Sunday, a perfectly good day to work.
It is a perfectly good day to work. Okay, so where was I? Back to this thing. Well, now everybody can shout at me from the internets. The voice from the deep. All right, so Home Assistant is a project that has followed the classic trajectory.
Peter Lawler said, "Yay, shift work."
Yeah. I suspect it's not so much shift work as obsession work. So, oh, Mitchell, Sion made a comment earlier. Oh, okay, that's what. That's what. Anyway, okay. So,
Amanda Thompson said, "I use Home Assistant and it is great for me."
Yep, awesome. So, I've got to say up front that I am not an expert on foundations and legal structures and those sorts of things. I have some experience because I worked for, probably the closest relevant experience is I worked for MariaDB Foundation for a while, and I was president of Linux Australia for a few years, and also at IVT, my software company. In the last years, our primary customer base was non-profits and professional associations. So I saw some of the services they were providing and how they operated from an external point of view, at least. But I'm not an expert, so this is like opinion land. So if you are going to create a foundation, just off the top of my head, I can think of 4 reasons for doing that. Okay, before I get into those 4 reasons, what path got us here. So Home Assistant started classic open source trajectory of one person who had a problem or a need and wasn't really happy with other options out there, decided to do something to make something to solve their own problem. Other people thought, that's cool, I can use that as well, and it grew from there. So it was, it attracted contributors, it got to critical mass where there were many people using it. It developed a large user base, people who were not contributing to it, but who were consuming it, essentially using it like a product. And it has become incredibly powerful and very popular, and it can do lots and lots of different things. So at a certain point, projects like this get to, I was going to say a tipping point, but tipping point is not really quite the right term. They reach a size where there is tension in a few ways. They become big enough that people want to work on them full time. And how do you do that when it is just people spending their spare time and they're working a regular day job? So there are a few different things that can happen at that point, and it depends on the complexity of the project. If the scope of the project is small enough that it can be done by just one person, then one of the paths forward is to try to find a way to fund that person to continue working on that project full time, which could be through Patreon and those sorts of things. So that's one of the paths that has happened for a number of projects over the last few years.
Jordan Reese says reach critical mass.
Yeah, reach critical mass, and they get burnt out, as Crispian says. Yeah, so it can be a very difficult sort of situation. And there are some examples of other ways to look at this. For example, Octoprint is one. So the way Octoprint works is no one read announcements. Octoprint is sorry, I'm just opening a few things in the meantime. For those of you who don't know, Octoprint is a software platform that's used as a front end for 3D printers. And Gina, I don't actually know how to pronounce Gina's surname, so I'm really sorry about this, but it's, hang on, this is how it's spelt. If I bring this up, is it going to go up there? Yeah. So if anyone who speaks German knows how to say that, Hausch, maybe, Gina Hausch. So Gina started developing this. This is the classic trajectory of a small, not really small, but popular open source project. Gina wanted to manage her 3D printer and created this web-based front end that ran on a Raspberry Pi to have a web interface that would sit in front of the 3D printer. And Gina now works on this full time and is supported by, so just as an example, this is the Octoprint set up on one of my printers. So this is the user interface. Is the camera working? Yes, it is. So that's the live camera feed from inside my Prusa. So Gina works full time on this and is supported via Patreon and those sorts of crowdfunding methods. And it's a very active project. She's constantly doing new releases. There are plugin developers who create things that interoperate with it. And so talking about this is actually very relevant to the Open Home Foundation, because in some respects it's like a scaled down version of the same sort of structure or dynamic and pressures that Home Assistant has had over the years. With Gina as the primary developer, other people will make contributions in terms of they might fix a bug or add a feature or something and then send in a pull request so that it gets merged into the official code base. But Gina is the core, the center of everything. And because Octoprint has a plugin architecture, it means that other people can create add-ons, and there are add-ons for hundreds and hundreds of things. And those add-ons are for things like integrating with power control so that you can have your 3D printer turn itself off automatically when it's finished a print job, or change the color of LEDs based on the status of a job, and all of those sorts of things. Oh, Johnny says, I support Octoprint monthly. Yes. Let's see. Let's see if it can say the name.
Say her name like Gina Heuske.
Gina Heuske. Is that right? Okay. Gina Heuske. Yes. So Johnny said, I support Octoprint monthly. Yes, I do too. So through, I'm pretty sure it's Patreon. I can't even remember which platform Gina uses. You can replay it to be sure. Okay, cool. So that was, I'm going to replay that. Here we go.
Mitchell said, say her name like Gina Heuske.
Gina Heuske. Awesome. Thanks, Mitchell. So, yeah, it's got that classic structure of core developers, either one or multiple, who act as, I was going to use the term gatekeeper, but that kind of has negative consequences. I think it's more, what's the term? Yeah, I can't really think of the term of it right now. But it is the person who coordinates and manages everything. That person can become a bottleneck in terms of there being too much weight on their shoulders, which, as Crispian commented earlier, can lead to burnout. And you end up with another one of those classic XKD situations of the entire internet depending on one being propped up on one little project which is maintained by someone in their spare time and is on the verge of burning out at any one point. So then you have the broader ecosystem with people like plugin contributors who can create their own add-ons for the system and interoperate with it, and then be contributed and then become listed in the marketplace. So if I just bring back up my other Octoprint thing, if I come to here, where is it? Plugin Manager, you can see I've got some plugins installed. So I've got Anonymous Usage Tracking plugin installed, which reports stats back to Gina, announcement plugin, action, etc. So I've got a couple of plugins here, backup and restore. Classic webcam I've got installed so that my camera works. Yeah, there's actually a bunch of plugins installed. And if I wanted to add more, there are many plugins contributed by third parties or other people who decide that they want to make something that interoperates with it. So what has happened over the years with Home Assistant is that on a bigger scale. Just bringing up the Home Assistant site. Here we go. Let's stick this in here. Yeah, so homeassistant.io. So that's what's happened on a bigger scale. The original project that was started by, where was it? What was his name? Paulus Schutzen. So the original project that was started by Paulus has grown, and it's a very big project now. It has many people whose houses depend on this to operate. It has many people contributing to it. It is one of the bigger and more successful open source projects that has really hit that critical mass where so many people depend on it. There are so many people involved in its development, and the community providing support and configuration information and tutorials and videos about it and that sort of thing. It's a very big project, and obviously rather relevant to what we're doing here. Now there are some things on here like Home Assistant Green. You can see you can go off and buy a Home Assistant Green or a Home Assistant Yellow and have hardware with Home Assistant running on it. And that is very relevant to what I'm talking about now with the creation of the foundation. Because imagine you're in the situation. You have spent years as a volunteer working on a project that is used by hundreds of thousands of people around the world. You have other people who are also extremely dedicated and spending a very large part of their time working on it. You have other contributors one level removed from that who do occasional contributions. It's the classic dartboard open source model where you've got the core who are obsessed with it, work on it constantly, and then the others who are very active contributors, and then others who are more on the outside and they contribute a little bit from time to time with decreasing levels of involvement. So this can end up being a very dangerous situation. It's a situation where the core, the stability of that core can very much depend on the personalities of the people involved, how they relate to each other, and how they relate to the greater community, and critically, how they are funded. How is it that they spend so much time focused on this project, working on it, when they could be doing paid contracting work or working for an employer or running their own business or whatever? And so when you see things like, where was I? Home Assistant, this one. So this is Home Assistant. It's an open source project, and these devices are being sold. So if you buy one of these devices, where does the money go? I don't know if you could hear that. Lachlan is out the back building some mezzanine, and he's using a like an impact driver, putting screws through steel girders. So yeah, it's every now and then there is a lot of background noise. Oh, Cassio said benevolent dictator. Yeah. Incognito says beneficial dictator for life. Yeah, the BFDL is...
Amanda Thompson said John just ordered more Z-Wave power boards and a power node. Remind others in the stream you have them again. They are great.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. I will do that. I might mention that a bit later. So, yeah, BFDL, benevolent dictator for life. BDFL, sorry, I got the acronym backwards. BDFL, benevolent dictator for life. Yes, so, yeah, where are we? Oh, Alistair commented, it's interesting that we have reached a point where we expect text-to-speech to pronounce things properly. Yes, you're right. It is amazing how good text-to-speech has got in recent years. It is really, really good.
Mitchell R. said intermit. Tech said the money goes to Nabu Casa since they design, make, and sell the hardware.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. So Nabu Casa design, make, and sell the hardware. All right, I am going to get to that in just a second. I'm going to give you a very quick... So the four... My phone just went doing. Hang on, I've got to put it on silent. My phone just gave me a warning that I've been sitting still for too long and that I need to get up and move around. No, not right now. Not for another 1 hour and 24 minutes. So, off the top of my head, the 4 reasons that I can think of for creating a foundation are: 1, to protect the intellectual property, which includes things like source code, designs, trademarks, etc. 2 is a forum for compatibility alignment. I'm going to explain each of these things in a little bit more detail. So that is a place for people to come together and discuss issues to make sure that products are compatible with each other. The 3rd is a mechanism to accept and distribute funds, which could be in the form of donations or whatever. And the 4th, which is what we're seeing here, is a mechanism to sell products. Now, products or services. It's not just necessarily products. And those last 2 can sometimes be kind of linked together. I mean, these are not really necessarily 4 very distinct things, but they're just like some dot points as ways to think about all of this. So the okay, so the first one, which is protecting intellectual property. So I'm going to get to the mechanism to sell products last, and which is what's on the screen right now. So when I was at MariaDB Foundation, and so there are those 4 reasons for creating a foundation, and typically it will be for more than one of those reasons that they are created. You wouldn't necessarily create a foundation just because you wanted to do one of those things. It's usual, but there's often one that's more important than the others, but it's usually a combination of those things. Now, the first one, protecting intellectual property. So that's source code, designs, licenses, trademarks, etc. So there's okay, as I understand it, I may be wrong and I misinterpreted, but as I understand it from when I was at MariaDB Foundation, that was protecting intellectual property was the primary driver behind the creation of the... Oh, and there is a 5th. There is a 5th reason, which is providing infrastructure for the project. That's kind of tied to the 3rd reason as well, but I suppose it's a dot point on its own. So I'll address that. In fact, I'm going to make a note of that to myself. Provide infrastructure. Yep. So that I remember. I've got notes to myself so that even if I chase squirrels, hopefully I will come back to the topic at some point. Now, when... excuse me. So for those of you who don't know, I won't go into great detail on this. But the very brief background, it's useful to know because it explains the motivation here. MySQL, the database, was started by Monty Wadenius and a couple of co-conspirators, and so MySQL, My is actually named after his daughter, My, and it went through this classic growth pattern became an extremely popular open source project, very large. To some extent, you could say that MySQL was driving the internet through like the 2000s. It was the back-end database to so much of the internet. And then through a series of acquisitions, it went through a couple of acquisitions. There was MySQL AB, which was the incorporated company that was created. MySQL AB, I believe, hopefully I'm not misrepresenting this, I think this is what happened. MySQL AB was sold to Sun, as in Sun Microsystems. As I said, this is from memory. I may not even have the correct company here. And then Sun was bought by Oracle. So up until this point, Oracle, the database company, was the major competitor to MySQL, the database company. And because of these acquisitions, Oracle ended up owning MySQL. And when that happened, obviously, the danger is that MySQL would basically just cease to exist. It would not receive any further updates, etc., and it would die off. And what happened was that the day that Oracle took control of the MySQL code base, Monty took a copy of the source code of MySQL, a snapshot at that point in time, and then forked it. Basically, he forked the project that he himself started, and the fork became MariaDB. And so MariaDB, named after his other daughter Maria, became a successor to the MySQL project. Now, there's a whole lot of personal stuff and politics and anger and community angst and stuff that happened at the time, but the end result is that MariaDB is a direct continuation of the lineage of the original MySQL code base. And he wanted to make sure that that situation could not happen again. The goal was to protect the project and its open source underpinnings, to make sure that it couldn't be taken over by a corporate entity and then killed or controlled or subverted or whatever. And so the MariaDB Foundation was created. The foundation was then granted, so what happened was that the individuals involved then granted their copyright to the MariaDB Foundation, so that the MariaDB Foundation held the copyright to the source code and could control what happened to it. It could determine whether the code ended up being sold and relicensed or whatever. And so the purpose of the MariaDB Foundation was to protect the source code, make sure that it always remained available under a free and open license so that everybody could always benefit from it. It also provides protection of things like trademarks. Now, this is an interesting one which affects could potentially affect a lot of open source projects. So IP law is something I have spent too much time involved in over the years, and I don't like it. I'm not really that interested in it, but it's just something that seems to keep being a recurring theme. It becomes important in so many situations. So there are trademarks, so copyright controls ownership of things like source code. Creative works is covered by copyright. And then there are trademarks, which can cover things like brand names and logos and company names and those sorts of things. So one of the things is, what is to stop someone from creating another database project and then naming it MariaDB? then who's going to stop them? If you are if you're a small project, like a small open source project, and you have created something that has become popular, it has a name, it has a cachet, it has, people identify with it. You say the name and they have a positive association with it. Someone else comes along and creates a project and then they call it the same thing. How do you deal with that sort of situation? If you have a foundation or some kind of a legal entity which owns the trademarks and everything else associated with the branding for that project, then that legal entity can act to protect it. So that's another reason for, so this is all still point 1 of my now 5 points of why you would want to create a foundation. So creating protecting the IP. That's the summary of point 1. Protecting the designs to make sure it always remains open source. Protecting the branding and the trademarks so that no one creates a competing project and then names it the same thing. Or worse still, a commercial entity creates a project, names it the same thing, and then actively comes after you and shuts you down. That sucks. So, and in fact, that actually happened, kind of, that sort of thing happened to Opulo. Now, which is the open source pick and place project, started by Stephen and Lucian. So, Opulo was not their first name.
_creations said OXRS Foundation when lol.
I don't know. Yeah, they did not intend to name their company Opulo or their product the Lumen PNP. They had to rebrand because of an entity that didn't like their use of the name they were going to use and came after them, sent them a cease and desist. So that sort of thing can be a problem. And having a legal entity that represents the identity of the project can be a very good defensive structure. All right, so enough about protecting IP. Point the second, a forum for compatibility alignment. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is, if you have a now this is more of a hub and spoke sort of model, where you might have a number of entities, which could be corporations or other foundations or whatever, that want to create projects or products that interoperate. If those entities have to negotiate with each other individually, that's a mess. If you can create some kind of like a focal point or a /forum/ entity where groups can come together and discuss what they're planning to do, not necessarily in a way that says you can only do it like this, but provide some platform, some mechanism for groups to come together and discuss how they want to do things. It increases the chances of things being compatible. And so this is how things like the Matter Foundation work. Now this is an important one. Matter. And there are many foundations there, and some of them are not Matter Foundation. I want Matter. Let's see. Matter.com.au. Matter blog? No. What's the? Oh, I really hate names like Matter because you can't search for it. It's just ridiculous. All right, here we go. Matter standard. I've got to turn to Wikipedia to find anything. So, here we go. Committee, Connectivity Standards Alliance. All right, so Connectivity Standards Alliance, formerly the Zigbee Alliance. So this came out of Zigbee. It's a group of companies that maintain and publish Zigbee and Matter Standard along with several others. So this comes back to the IP protection thing as well. So Zigbee is a registered trademark of the group. So this group is protecting the trademark Zigbee. And what else? Yeah, they publish application profiles and the standard, blah, blah, blah. So the Alliance's membership has grown. I didn't know it was that big. That's really surprising. 500 companies. Including Comcast, IKEA, Legrand, Samsung, Amazon, and many others. They didn't mention Apple. I'm pretty sure Apple is a member, along with a whole bunch of other very, very big companies that are involved in the home automation industry / market. So what this does, in this particular case, what the purpose of the project is, or in this case it's an alliance. Essentially you can think of it as a foundation. It's providing effectively the same purpose or outcome, is a way for these companies to get in a room and discuss how do we want to create products that are going to interoperate. And so this provides them the forum for that to happen, and then the mechanism to document the decisions that come out of that and publish those decisions so that companies can follow those standards. And then by doing that, it allows products to interoperate. Now, this is very interesting in a couple of ways. One, if you think about the evolution of the smart home, it has gone through a number of cycles. What we are coming out of now, what we saw for quite a few years, was the balkanization of systems. There was a period where everybody wanted to own the ecosystem. Everybody wanted to be the hub that controlled everything. And you would have to buy into a particular ecosystem. And we had lots and lots of point solutions. So we had, if for example you're a company that makes smart electric blinds, then what you would do is you would design your blinds, you would create some kind of a gateway and a web service, you would publish an app that people can put on their phones, and then if they wanted to control their blinds, they would open the Joe Blogg Smart Blinds app, and then they could control their blinds. And if they want to run their vacuum cleaner, they would open the U-Butte Vacuum Cleaner Company app and control that. And you would end up with all of these different things. So it's what I call point solutions. So when you're solving one problem and you have a user interface that is dedicated to that particular thing, but all of them operate in isolation. And so it's just a pain in the ass in terms of being able to control it, because you have to open all of the different control systems to be able to control all your different devices, a different app for everything. And so, and part of that, like through that same period, we saw companies that were wanting to build their own standard, and they create their own hub, they create their own add-on accessories to it, and they say, hey, everybody should buy into this, and we want to control everything. And so we saw a fracture in the industry where there were groups of things that would work together, but those groups of things weren't interoperable. And it was primarily the big companies that were responsible for this, because they all wanted to own everything. Google wanted to own everything. Amazon wanted to own everything. And so if you had some Google stuff, some Amazon stuff, they wouldn't interoperate unless you really worked hard at it and there was a lot of pain. But they did not play nice with each other. So we ended up with walled gardens, multiple walled gardens that barely recognized each other's existence. So we are now moving past that, and this is, I don't know, I think I'm a hopeful person. I hope I'm a hopeful person. I am hopeful that when I first heard about matter, I was skeptical. So the idea is that matter is a protocol that allows devices to interoperate. And I thought, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But I was kind of cynical about it. And now I am much more hopeful. It seems that okay, so...
Scott Miller said, except the walled gardens. All require you open your own wall to talk to their servers.
Yes, that is a very good point, Scott. Where was I? That was a good point, but I am totally derailed now. What was I thinking of? Oh, right. So at the time, what I was worried about was that what would happen is that we would go from multiple walled gardens to one big walled garden. And to explain that, there was a walled garden.
Miller said squirrel.
Yep, there was a walled garden around the Amazon ecosystem. There was a walled garden around the Google ecosystem, etc. All these different things. And if you had an open source project like Home Assistant or whatever, or even something like Tasmoda, or some of these very popular things that they could not necessarily interoperate with these walled gardens. But things like Home Assistant and OpenHab and others were growing and were popular and potentially threatening the walled gardens. So my thought was, perhaps by creating Matter as a protocol that is used by these major walled gardens to interoperate with each other, it forms a bigger moat or a bigger wall around them collectively that then prevent open source projects from interoperating. Because if all the big players get together and say, we are all going to talk the same protocol, we are going to control that protocol, we're going to build in encryption and authentication keys, and we are going to sign binaries, and we are only ever going to allow our devices to talk to other devices that are part of our ecosystem, that then provides a very strong wall against anything else from getting in on the action.
Austin's_creation said yep, and the company Chamberlain, which does garage motors, and shut off their appy, then stuck ads into their app.
Yep, that can happen too. So I was worried to some extent that that's what would happen. And then we would end up in a world where home automation is totally dominated by the members of an alliance that exclude everybody else and use their combined weight and influence and control to suppress development, particularly open source development. From what I've seen, luckily that is not what's happened, and Matter has become more of a rallying point, which is the best possible outcome. It has become something that basically everybody seems to be jumping on board and wanting to use Matter. So I'm not going to
System notification. 1 hour remaining.
I'm not going to go into technical issues in terms of this can be a little bit like the Beta versus VHS or whatever it is argument with video recorders. So Matter is not necessarily technically the perfect solution. There are other ways it could have been done. It could have been implemented in different ways. It could have been based on a different underlying platform. So many decisions could have been done in different ways, but I don't think that actually matters, because what has come out of this...
Imogen Ann said, I've stopped paying for Spotify because it stopped talking to my Chromecast, something I had been able to do from the start.
Yeah, that's true. Yes. So, sorry, I just saw the other comment by David. Aren't we still in the preamble for today's topic? Well, kind of. Kind of. This is all about today's topic. So, where was I? My brain has totally exploded. Hang on. I am going to take a swig of some iced coffee. All right, maybe that will help. It can't hurt. I don't think it can hurt, can it? Maybe. Yeah, so matter has become kind of a common ground, which is fantastic. And to the extent, so I can't really talk about this in detail because it's a commercial project, but I can just give you some very high level things. Just as an example, one of my clients, who I've mentioned in the past, is Bubble Pay. And in the latest version, so Bubble Pay does payment gateway systems for laundromats. And so in the latest version of the hardware that we've built, we've included Matter support. We've put an ESP32H2 in it, so that the washing machines in the laundromat can all participate in a Matter network. And that so this is going into a semi-industrial sort of application. And iced coffee. Nice one, some call it fun. So Matter is going into places that you would not necessarily initially think of. It's not. It is going everywhere. Because it is open enough, and there are open source implementations of it, that you can make use of this. You can participate in Matter networks. You can create your own Matter networks. And so it is having, instead of having a chilling effect and a more of a walled garden effect, it seems to be having an enabling effect, which I am very, very happy about. Iced coffee. Sorry, I'm just being amused by the by the chat. Yeah, so okay, that was my point, was forum for compatibility alignment. Now, this is not necessarily direct. As I said earlier, there are these reasons for creating a foundation. And this one, as far as I know, is not really a great motivator for creating the... I keep wanting to call it the Home Assistant Foundation. So it's called the Open Home Foundation, but it was created by the Home Assistant people. It's not really I don't think it's high on their list of reasons for doing this, but creating a forum for compatibility alignment is an important reason that many of these foundations are created. All right, so now we're getting into the juicy stuff. Point 3, a mechanism to accept and distribute funds. Now, I talked earlier about Gina and Octoprint, and supporting Gina through Patreon and whatever other mechanisms there are. Now, that works when you have one person. In Gina's case, she is full-time and she is the foundation of Octoprint. So if you are contributing to Octoprint as I am and as my Swedish friend is, then what you are doing is contributing to Gina being able to work full-time on that project and enabling the ongoing development of something that is useful to you, that is benefiting you and benefiting many other people. So that is so that's fine if you're a single person. But as soon as you go beyond one core person, this becomes a problem. If you are contributing, say for example, someone else in the Octoprint community.
Scott Miller said John and Johnny are enablers.
Yes. So if someone else in the Octoprint community became essentially a second Gina, and the two of them were working on this project, they could have their own Patreon accounts and you could support them individually. But how do you support the project collectively? And that is how a foundation can help as well. So if you have, so Home Assistant is big enough that there are many people working on it. And if you want to support Home Assistant, imagine you are someone like me or you, and you use Home Assistant. So right now I don't actually use Home Assistant, but someone who uses Home Assistant and they think, I would like to contribute, say, $5 a month or whatever, as a way of ensuring that this project has longevity and it will continue to be developed for my benefit. So it doesn't, you can have an altruistic basis for it, but you can also have a self-interest basis for it. It can be a case of, I don't want these people to burn out. I want them to have the resources that they need to be able to continue developing the project that I rely on, that my house runs on, and if it fails, then my house is in trouble. So you have a vested interest in the success of the project. How do you contribute to that? And the foundation can be a mechanism for that, for the acceptance and distribution of funds. In the I'm just trying to decide if I will talk about the funding background of MariaDB Foundation and how that works. It's not directly relevant. Okay, I'll skip it. So by having a foundation, it provides an entity to accept funds and then distribute them. Then, of course, you have the issue of, if you're going to distribute funds to your core developers or to your developers in general, how do you distribute them? How do you do that equitably? How do you do it without getting people offside? There are probably, with a project that's as big as Home Assistant, there are probably people who are working on it full time. And there are people who are working on it part-time. There are people who contribute occasionally. How do you distribute funds to those people? So that's a decision that has to be made by the foundation and how they set up their structure of distributing funds. Now, and in relation to that, there is so much more that could be discussed about that. But let's move on from that into the next point, which is related, which is providing infrastructure. So what I was just talking about was accepting funds and then distributing them to developers, which is essentially paying developers for their time, paying people to continue working on Home Assistant. But there are other expenses related to running an open source project, particularly one as big and popular as Home Assistant. For example, where are we? Here we go. homeassistant.io. This is a website. It runs on a web host somewhere. Someone is paying for for this website? Where are the funds coming from? In the early days, it's typically the individual. Whoever created the project will be paying for the registration of that domain. So, and for the hosting, there will be monthly fees coming out. So I currently pay. So I pay for hosting for a bunch of things, like Superhouse, for example. So I'm currently paying around $120 a month in hosting fees, which is not a huge amount, and I can cover that. That's not a problem. But once you get up to a certain scale, you need things like build bots. So you might have hosting requirements that include test environments. You might need to run up virtual machines to simulate all sorts of different environments. You might need different devices. For example, the apps for Home Assistant need to be tested to run on iOS and on Android and on multiple Android devices and multiple iOS releases. So you might need a bunch of phones or emulators, which you've got to pay for. You need to pay for the all the storage, forums. So where have we got here? Examples, blog, need help getting started. Where are we? There, I presume that there is a forum related to Home Assistant. Where are we? Join our newsletter, announcements, categories. Yeah. Anyway, there are expenses. That is my point. When you start running a project like this, there can be, it is very easy for it to run into the hundreds of dollars a month region of expenses. And when you are an individual doing this, that can start to hurt. So having a foundation is a way of bringing in funds that can then cover those infrastructure expenses and provide the services that enable the developers on that open source project to do what they want to do. So that's good. Hang on a second, coffee time. I'm just wondering if I am talking to myself now. Nobody has said anything in chat for a while. Okay, so where are we? So that was providing infrastructure. Some Call It Fun just said, Foundation could also provide assurance for big players that one person won't just sidetrack the entire project. That's a very good point. Yes. So it provides confidence in the project and basically shows that it's serious. Yeah.
Scott Miller said, we're quietly listening.
Oh, thanks, Scott. So that was providing infrastructure, all of the overheads and expenses and things like that. Now, there is, so the fifth point is a mechanism to sell products or provide services, I'm making notes to myself once again to keep myself on track. Okay, so mechanism to sell products, and this is what comes back to, where are we? Home Assistant, Home Assistant Green. So as was explained earlier by Austin, somebody, I can't remember, these devices are created by a company and sold. So this company, I'm not sure who owns it. Is it Austin is working on getting a 3D printer running. Hopefully I have a photo before the end of the stream. Nice. Good one, Austin.
System notification, 45 minutes remaining.
Okay, so where are we? Yes. So I'm not sure if the company behind this is directly related to the core developers. I assume it is. But this is an area where you can have friction in an open source project. imagine that you have, your project has grown to the point where you have a core team. There are a few people involved, and at some point it makes sense to have some kind of a product which encompasses your project. It could be open hardware that runs the open source software. It could be...
W says Nabu Casa.
Nabu Casa, that's it. Paulus owns Nabu Casa. Right. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. So, if you are the founder of the project and you create a company, you could make devices and sell it. But this can lead to resentment within an open source project, because what it can feel like for other contributors is that they are enabling a commercial organization or a financial outcome for someone who is benefiting from their work. You have to be very, very careful of that. This is something that I have felt really icky about pretty much all the way along. With things like devices, like things like the light switch controller. Here's the example.
Unexpected Maker said, Boss 1, I'm at work making and testing boards.
Your boss 1, yep. Fire yourself, Sion. I'll give yourself a day off. Yes. I just noticed that there are a couple of good points in the chat there. So in case I forget to come back to them, I'll mention them now. Some Call It Fun said, they also provide some ability to fight legal battles, such as the higher lawsuit cease and desist order for reverse engineering their API. Yeah, that is a very good point. That is slightly tied into my first point about protecting IP, including code and trademarks, etc. It also is protecting developers and providing an entity that can undertake legal battles. So I'm going to make another point in my notes here. Provides entity separated from individual contributors. Yeah, so for liability and defensive reasons and protecting trademarks, etc. Okay, so Wagonloads asked, hi everyone, can these Home Assistant devices be reprogrammed to link to your own website? Well, Home Assistant, by its nature, the goal of it, I might get into this a little bit if I've got time after the foundation stuff. Well, they actually kind of mention it here. Where are we? On the home, if we go back to the Home Assistant homepage. No, it wasn't there. It might have been in this. Here we go. Yeah. So,
Austin's_creations said, I find it interesting that the companies you normally have to fight are the larger ones that already corner the market.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to protect themselves. They're protecting their market share. It's like, I own this. This is my hoard of gold and I'm going to sit on it and no one else can have any. Where was it? So Wagonloads, yes. There was a thing in here. I'm trying to find the specific explanation. Yeah. Okay. This is the quote. Because it offers 4 things simultaneously. Local control of your smart home. Local control, that is very important. That can be faster and more reliable in the cloud. Authority over and access to all your data. Compatibility with almost every connected gadget regardless of protocol or manufacturer. And the ability to make them work together. That is a really good summary of the benefits of things like Home Assistant. It is it's removing your reliance on the cloud and using cloud services as add-on value, not as a core requirement for the system to work at all. The system will work even with no internet connection. It can run entirely local. So, yes, I hope that answers the question, wagon loads. But basically the point of all of this, the silly way of looking at it is that this is a Raspberry Pi in a box. Now there are differences between these two, the green and the yellow, in terms of the hardware that they include. But what the goal with this, there are several goals with making this available, the Home Assistant Green. I remember when it first came out, a lot of people were saying, oh no, why would you buy a Home Assistant Green? It's just a Raspberry Pi in a box for more money. And like, well, yeah, that's the point. The thing is that for many people, so you have a group of people who want the benefits of a home automation system, and they are perfectly happy with downloading an ISO image onto their computer and putting an SD card into the thing and then running the burner, and then they put it into a Raspberry Pi and then they configure it to get it on their network, and then they set up users and do all of the setup stuff, and they find a power supply to run the Pi, and the Pi is a bare board without an enclosure, so maybe they have to buy a case to put it in. Like, there are people that go through that. I mean, you and I, the sort of people that are here talking about this stuff now, we are the sort of people who can do that. But we are a very small subset of the people who could be making use of Home Assistant and home automation. There is a huge potential user base beyond that for whom messing around at that level is not worth their time. It's beyond their abilities, whatever reason. They've got other things to do. What they want to do is plonk down $100, have a box, plug it in, open a web browser, hey, I'm ready to go, discover devices, and now we have a working system. And who cares if it's $40 of hardware in a $100 box? That's not the point. The point is that this is an enabler that allows people to make use of this project and benefit from it. And they couldn't necessarily otherwise do it. And for many people, even if they have the technical ability, it might be worth just saying, well, like for someone who is very technically competent, but they just don't want to spend a couple of hours screwing around with setting up a Raspberry Pi, they might be quite happy to say, here's $100, give me a thing that works. I'll plug it in, problem solved. I don't want to care about that. So I think that these sorts of products, which can be created as a spin-off from an open source project, are very important enablers at allowing it to reach a greater customer base and community and bring other people in who would not necessarily otherwise be able to get over that hurdle or over that barrier. But coming back to the point I was making before, when you spend your $99 to buy a Home Assistant Green, that money goes to Nabu Casa, or is that the name of the company? I can't remember. And so then there is the issue of, are you supporting the project, the Home Assistant project as a whole, with those funds being distributed to the people who are contributing to the project, or are you supporting one specific person? Possibly, so in the case of Home Assistant Green, you are supporting essentially the core of the project, but still there might be situations where someone decides that they are going to attach themselves to it, make a device, they see the need, they see the niche that they want to fill, which is people who could use this project but don't want to do the setup themselves. And so they create a product and they start selling it and benefiting from it financially. Now you can be negative about it and say they are leeching off the hard work of the open source project. You can be positive about it and say they are enabling new people to come along and participate who couldn't otherwise, and therefore they are providing a benefit to the project. So there are angles, levels, Jerry. There are so many aspects to this, different ways of looking at it. So one of the things that something like a foundation could do is to sell devices. Now I don't know if, maybe this article explains it. I don't know if the goal of Open Home Foundation is to sell hardware. It may not be. I suspect that it's not. I think that this is more a mechanism to, well, actually, hang on. There was a thing here. There was a quote here. It might have been a different thing. I've had a look at a couple of articles about this very quickly this morning. Oh, here we go. Yes, cool. So the Home Assistant Green Smart Home Hub will be sold on Amazon this year, the first time the organisation will sell directly to consumers. A new line of Home Assistant Connect, dongles for Thread, Zigbee and Z-Wave, and blah blah blah. Okay, the Home Assistant Works With program for certification. Okay, this one's interesting. A new Home Assistant voice control hardware device running Home Assistant's local smart home voice assistant. Mycroft replacement perhaps is planned for release at the end of the year. Local AI with NVIDIA support, and UI improvement, which is an important one. But let's go all the way back to the start here. The Home Assistant Green Smart Home Hub will be sold on Amazon, which is interesting for a couple of reasons. One is that Amazon is a competitor, and I know that Amazon is an enormous company and they will happily sell whatever if they're going to make money from it. So they wouldn't be saying, no, you're not allowed to sell we're not going to sell your hub because it's competing with our own ecosystem. If they can make money out of it, they will. So, but it is interesting that Amazon will be selling the Home Assistant Smart Hub, and the other is that it will be possible for end consumers to just look around and go, do I get this hub? Do I get that hub? Oh look, there's the Home Assistant Green. It's got good reviews. It's compatible with everything. It's only 99 bucks. I think I'll just buy that one, which will bring more people in. Wagon Load said, the worst part of being developers is fighting patent and copyright trolls. Yeah, that really sucks. All right. I'm going to have a very quick look at the chat for a moment, because I have not been doing enough of that. Something just works. Okay, so just a few comments from people talking about home automation and Home Assistant. Scott said, isn't the HA hardware really just a baby server? Yeah, it is just a Raspberry Pi in a box. Runs in-house, upgraded. Trady says, I got my Home Assistant running. When you say Home HA, do you mean Home Assistant or Home Automation? It could mean either. I assume that it means Home Assistant.
System notification. 30 minutes remaining.
Trady says, I got my Home Assistant running on a NanoPi R2S, uses stuff all power. Yeah, NanoPis are actually really quite remarkably good. Alistair says, these days I deploy an Orange Pi 5, which is an RK3588 processor, 32 gigabyte in my apartments for Home Assistants, but at home it's a VM on my file server. Yep. So, oh, that's interesting. So for those of you who don't know, I mean, Alistair talks about this publicly, so hopefully I'm not disclosing anything too much here. Alistair has a number of apartments that he puts out under Airbnb. I think it's Airbnb. So he and with his tech background, he uses that to help improve the tools and things that he uses for managing those apartments, for things like access control and all that sort of stuff. So that's interesting. So you got Home Assistant running in each of your apartments. That's kind of cool. Kim S said, yeah, maybe it's time I try to use Home Assistant instead of OpenHab. Amanda said, yes, I started with the Pi for Home Assistant. Now I run it on an HP EliteDesk 800 G4 mini desktop, PC i7. Oh, groovy. Austin said, I mostly use Home Assistant for the mobile app and notifications. Everything else is running through Node-RED. Yep. So that is the architecture that I think I want to move to. I have been using Node-RED dashboard to control everything. So right now, here in the Super Lab, I have Node-RED running in Docker on my Synology NAS, and that essentially controls everything. It links out to things like the Z-Wave gateway via MQTT to control all the power boards and things. Oh, which reminds me, okay, I am going to do a shameless, totally shameless self-plug here. Superhouse, I am going to, because I want you to buy my stuff, to give me some room. Where are we? Products. Come on, get up there. Where is it? Retired Z-Wave. Okay, so this is what Amanda was talking about earlier. I have heaps of these Z-Wave power boards and single node power outlets and bundle packs. So the single ones are basically just bundle packs that I've pulled apart, but this is what I have. It's a box with two 6-way power boards in it.
Creations said, what happened to the RGB downlights?
Oh no, that fell through. I ended up getting they gave me a box to experiment with and doing the trying to get Tasmoda running on them, which I did, and then they wanted me to buy the rest at a discounted price, but still I would have had to pay like $6,000 or something to buy the rest of their stock, and then I could have sold it off over time, but I just didn't have the money for that, so that didn't end up going anywhere. So yeah, two 6-way power boards. There are 3 single outlet sockets, and then some junk to throw away. There's a Z-Wave gateway and a Z-Wave status display here, which you just chuck in the bin. They're not much use unless you pull them apart and try to do something with them. And then power supplies, Ethernet cable, other random stuff. So the way you use these is by linking them. So I've got them a Raspberry Pi with a Z-Wave USB stick plugged into it, and that is how I control them. So anyway, if anyone is interested in Z-Wave, I have all of these brand new unused Z-Wave bundles for $50. So Z-Wave, I'm going to drop this in the chat. Oh yes, I can see on the order screen, Amanda has ordered more. All right. Shameless self-promotion there, but I have boxes and boxes of these things piled up in my factory, and I really want to get rid of them so that it will clear up some more space. So please buy my Z-Wave stuff. All right, now, yeah, where am I up to? Yeah, shameless self-promotion. That's right. So I was talking about, what was the subject today? It was something to do with Home Assistant, wasn't it? Oh yes, the Open Home Foundation. Now, okay, so last point before I start talking about the name and what that implies. Last point being that it provides an entity separated from individual. Okay, no, back to the first thing. Not the first thing, the last thing. Mechanism to sell products or
Scott
provide
Miller
services.
said HA squirrels.
Yeah. Okay. So we just read that Amazon is going to be selling Home Assistant Green. Now, what this represents, quite apart from all the things I was talking about before, is if you are Amazon and you want to sell this device, who do you engage with? Are you, as Amazon, going to engage with a single individual person? Well, possibly yes, actually, but or are you going to engage with a company, some kind of organization to sell these things? And so this is one of the reasons for creating a foundation, is that it creates a legal entity that can enter into contracts. It can, such as supply agreements, it can apply for funding and take loans and pay suppliers, engage contractors, all those sorts of things. It provides a legal entity that can do things that as an individual are quite burdensome. So providing a legal... Jordan says long delay on the stream. Maybe you're just not up to date, I'm not sure.
Unexpected Maker said, I don't think Amazon is selling them. I think they are going to be sold on Amazon.
Yes, yeah, they're not selling them yet. This was just this is something that was in their announcement saying it will be sold on Amazon this year. Hang on. It says the first time the organization will sell directly to consumers, but they already do, don't they? Like if you, oh well, that's through, yeah, through the company. If you come along to here, buy now, where does this take you? Shipping to Australia. Oh, okay, so they've got, oh, Smart Guys, yep, and Oz Smart Things. Right, so let's go to Oz Smart Things, 150 Australian dollars, and I can just buy it. Yeah. So they're already selling to consumers. I don't know what they're talking about there.
Mitchell R. said what is saying is Amazon themselves aren't selling them. Haas and Org will sell as a third-party seller on Amazon.
Ah, got you. Okay, that's the distinction. Thank you. So Amazon
Scott
will not...
Miller said sold on Amazon isn't the same as sold by Amazon.
Right. Sold on Amazon, not sold by Amazon.
Unexpected Maker said no. The distinction between WHO is selling them. Sold on Amazon means someone else sells them via Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much for the correction. I understand the distinction now. Yeah, so... Where were we? Okay. So I think that's my final point about the foundation and what it can do, is that it does provide that separate legal entity for all of those
Text says it's not the foundation
things.
doing the selling currently.
Oh, okay. It's not the foundation doing the selling currently. That's right. So it's that other company that does it. So the foundation will be selling them. Okay. Now this has some... all right, I have some not very well formed thoughts on this. I mean, all of this, everything I've been talking about so far, this all came about because just before coming down here, I happened to look on my phone and saw that the Open Home Foundation had been announced. So this is all, take everything that I say with a grain of salt, because I am just making all of this up as I go. This is all just my first off-the-cuff reactions to hearing this news, so I am not very well informed. Okay, but my note that is called Open Home Foundation. It is not called Home Assistant Foundation. Now, what I hope is that the reason owns and governs. That's interesting. Our collabs. Yeah. Okay. So Nabu Casa is the company. Open Home Foundation. Yeah, I'm going to need to read a whole lot more about this to understand more about it. But this is reinforcing what I hoped. This section, our work. Now, calling it the Open Home Foundation and not the Home Assistant Foundation suggests that their vision for the scope of this foundation is far broader than just Home Assistant. And what they're saying here on this little opening paragraph ties back to points I was making earlier about one of the purposes of a foundation being a forum for compatibility, alignment, and cooperation. So what would be very interesting would be, for example, if the membership of the Open Home Foundation grew to include other projects that could potentially be seen as competitors. Things like OpenHab being involved in this, that would be interesting. And if the Open Home Foundation, so this is the thing, Open Home Foundation initially is going to be very closely coupled to Home Assistant because that's where it came from. And that's what constitutes its membership, and therefore the vision, etc., very much comes from that Home Assistant project. But if it can have its own identity.
Creations said OXRS, especially the touchscreen.
Yes, that's true. So I hadn't even thought about that. So OXRS could be a member of the Open Home Foundation. Perhaps. Although this is one of those things where OXRS doesn't really exist as an entity. OXRS is a bunch of people cooperating under a name. There is no organization, there's no foundation. So this comes into the situation of, if OXRS, whatever that is, wanted to join the Open Home Foundation, how does that happen? Who does it? Someone fills in a form or signs or something, but does that person have the rights to represent OXRS? Who decides? These are all the sorts of questions that creation of something like a foundation helps to address. Now, so this being their banner, like the first thing they say on the front and center of the homepage is obviously critical because it sets the tone for what they are about. The Open Home Foundation fights for the fundamental principles of privacy, choice, and sustainability for smart homes and for every person who lives in one. It does this by supporting the development of open source projects and open connectivity and communication standards. All right, well, that is a very positive and worthwhile goal. So I like that. This part here shows that it is broader, and it is intended to be broader than just the core project.
System notification, 15 minutes remaining.
Yeah, so coming back to MariaDB Foundation again. So MariaDB Foundation is a single project focused entity deliberately. It is an organization whose goal is to protect, develop, maintain, etc. the MariaDB database project. So that scope is very specifically focused on that project. The Open Home Foundation has a much broader scope in that it wants to encompass multiple projects. I think that's a very good thing, and what I hope is that it can achieve that goal. They have a big dream here, and I really hope that they can pull it off. It's yeah, it's cool to see. So down here, and it looks like there is already at least some. They are practicing what they preach already. I don't know how this came about. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but presumably there has been some ongoing discussion leading up until this point. So that at the point where the Open Home Foundation is announced, they already have a bunch of projects that are involved, not just Home Assistant. So Home Assistant is obviously the big headline thing that everybody recognizes, but also ESP Home is a very popular, very big project. Improv Wi-Fi, ZigPi, looks like there are a whole bunch of organizations. Collabs, WLED, Zigbee to MQTT, yeah, Z-Wave JS. Interesting. So I want to see more our projects. Oh no, I didn't want to just see those two. I wanted to see the list of all of the others. Okay, these are our external member projects the Open Home Foundation collaborates on but doesn't own. Oh, interesting. So that's the distinction. So Home Assistant and ESP Home are that's software we own and oversee development of that gave rise to the idea of the Open Home Foundation in the first place. Yeah, so these are the headline items, as they say there. Home Assistant and ESP Home. But then these are the collabs. So these are external projects that are members of the Open Home Foundation in some way. Our main requirement is that they remain open to everyone, not just us. Yeah, WLED, Raspberry, lots of things there. Zigbee to MQTT. There was the Z-Wave gateway thing in there as well. Yeah, well, they say that they have 240 projects, which is a shockingly big number. I don't know how they've arrived at 240 member projects already. That's like this list is much shorter. It's already looped around. We're back to Raspberry again. So there are only about 6 or 8 that they're showing in this little scrolling thing here. Oh, standards, drivers and libraries. Oh, okay. The Open Home Foundation owns and governs over 240 open standards, drivers and libraries. Oh, yeah, that's how they are making these numbers sound so big. So some of these will be things like components of home automation. Oh, sorry, Home Assistant. There'll be libraries and different things that have been created. And so 240 open is a big number, but that's because they're talking about the components that make up Home Assistant potentially included in that number. But the number of actual standalone projects that are part of this is much smaller. That makes sense. Okay. And is more in line with what I expect, because I would be shocked if they had, on the day of announcement, they had 240 complete open source projects somehow as members of this foundation. But anyway, it is very good to see how they're doing this. About us. Yeah. Oh, okay. It's got some of the backstory here. Initial commit. Lube. Yeah. So I can't remember if I've even dropped in the link to the Open Home Foundation. I better put that in it. Oh, Pancake Legend. Pancake Legend just sent a super chat. Thank you very much. Which reminds me, Pancake, aka Andrew, is the person who made the source bot, which is currently sitting on the thing out there. Tonight is outside the box. Crispian said, "Cool, we had pancakes for breakfast this morning." I'd like pancakes. Yeah. Sup. So SourceBot is currently sitting just on the other side of this wall, and if it's okay with you, I'm going to take it along tonight to the Prusa meetup. Yes, and show it to Joseph Prusa. I think he would be interested. I think he would think it's cool. Where was I? Yes, Open Home. Anyway, I think it's worth looking through all of this and seeing what they're saying about themselves and how we are organized. So this is interesting to read as well. Keith says we need a pancake bot for the barbecue. We definitely do. We need a pancake bot. Oh yes, so Scott said, when will you upgrade it to include hot sauce of some kind? That was the feature request at the last barbecue. So the last Sunday was the Superhouse barbecue, and the sauce bot was there, and it was in active use. It went through a whole thing of sauce. It was very popular. And the number one thing I heard from a couple of people was, it's got tomato sauce, it's got mustard, it needs a hot sauce dispenser, so it needs a third channel. You probably heard that as well. Oh, Sion asked, Prusa meetup. Yeah, there is a meetup tonight in Melbourne. Joseph Prusa is in Melbourne at the moment, and there is, I can't even remember where it is. Is it Eventbrite? Eventbrite. I think it might be Eventbrite. Is the place where you register for it. Email. I don't have that password on my computer. Austin says, can't forget homemade relish dispenser. I don't think that would go through the extruders. Oh. The Pancake says, working on adding an AI chatbot to SourceBot. It's a first step in some cool things coming to the hackerspace. Right. Yeah, so where are we? Okay. It's almost the end of time. Oh, Scott says, uh-oh, what if the AI gets depressed about being forced to supply source? Oh, Mitchell has just provided a link to Eventbrite. Here we go. Prusa user group meetup. So yeah, the Melbourne Prusa user group is having this meetup tonight. I don't know if there are tickets left. I think there were quite a small number of tickets available. I got a ticket only yesterday, and there were still tickets then. But the thing, it says few tickets left. Okay, so it's not too late. You can get along to it. So, Sion, if you make it along tonight, I will see you tonight at the Prusa user group meetup with Joseph himself. Right, so just finishing up. This is interesting. I'm going to read through this. I know you can read it for yourself, but I'm going to read this. The Open Home Foundation is a non-profit organisation funded by partner fees and supported via non-financial resources like IT infrastructure and employees dedicated to projects that align with Open Home Foundation principles. It does not accept individual donations. 5 minutes.
System notification, 5 minutes remaining.
Yeah, okay, so that's interesting that it does not accept individual donations. Maybe in the future they will allow that. I think that would be a good thing, because it would allow people who the end users of Home Assistant to throw in a few bucks, which would be very good.
Austin's_creations said my 3D print just finished.
Nice. Did it go well, Austin? Where were we? Back to here. Okay. Nabu Casa is the first and currently only partner of the Open Home Foundation. Future partners will have the same responsibilities. This newly defined relationship means the Open Home Foundation has no obligation to Nabu Casa and provides it no special benefits. Yeah, this is an important thing to say up front. So it doesn't... The idea is that this foundation should not be under the control of the... how do I put this? Of the founders, or of the... Certainly not of Nabu Casa, the company, which is currently the only partner of it. So it would be very easy to see this in a cynical way and say Open Home Foundation is like, what's the open source equivalent of greenwashing? Open washing. But it's really a commercial it's a commercial entity with like a front or something. Once they have multiple companies that are partners of it, then that fear will be dissipated, I think. Funding and support flows in a single direction from a partner to the Open Home Foundation and not vice versa. Okay, that's a very interesting distinction. A lot of thought has gone into this. I do like the way that they have thought through this, and then they are very succinctly stating what they are and are not and how things work, which gives more confidence in it. This is good. As a result, the majority of Nabu Casa's revenue goes towards supporting the Open Home Foundation, and most of the Nabu Casa's 30 employees work full-time on Open Home Foundation projects and external collabs. The board of the Open Home Foundation, working with a partner, determines how fees and non-financial resources are directed. For instance, instead of a partner directly giving money beyond its partner fee to the Open Home Foundation, the board may secure an agreement for that partner to pay the full-time salary of someone working on a critical smart home project. This includes projects not owned by the Open Home Foundation, such as the open source Z-Wave.js library. Yeah. All right. That all sounds like it is going in the right direction. Okay, board members. We have Paulus, Guy, Pascal, and Jay. Yeah. All right. And FAQs, etc. I think I've talked about this enough. Funny how I thought that I would just mention this and I'd be done in the first 10 minutes of the live stream talking about Open Home Foundation, and the entire live stream has been talking about Open Home Foundation. I thought I'd be unboxing the dummy load and connecting that and doing some testing with it, connecting a power supply to it and seeing how well it works. But no, it's still sitting in its box over there, sitting just inside the front door. Ah, yeah. Yes, yes.
Scott Miller said inverse squirrel stream.
Inverse squirrel stream. Yeah, there was a sad lack of squirrels this time.
Mitchell R said so time for a 15 minutes break and then round 2.
No, no. Now it's a lime stream. You're right, it is a lime stream. Look at this. It's a very lime stream. Now, sorry, I was looking at a comment. There we go. Pancake Legend. Andrew said, one at a time, a V2 is in the works that can do sauce, mustard, and barbecue sauce simultaneously. Ooh, so that must have been in response to a question about how does it do this dispensing. Yeah, currently it has 2 peristaltic pumps, one that dispenses mustard, one that dispenses sauce, and it runs one, and then you can press the other button and it runs the other. So you can't do mustard and sauce at the same time. You have to do mustard and then sauce. You are not allowed to do sauce and then mustard. I'm joking, of course. But yeah, it runs the dispense cycle and it can do a different pattern, like a squiggle versus a straight line or whatever. But interesting, yeah, interesting that Andrew is working on a V2 version. That is very cool. So, having spent the last 2 hours now going through this, I am happily positive about this development, about the Open Home Foundation. I think this could be a very good thing, and I hope that there are other projects that get involved in it and it grows beyond Home Assistant and the satellite projects that hang off Home Assistant. Hopefully it can encompass more of the open source home automation community and represent them in a significant way. So, yeah, I am going to leave it there. I think 2 hours talking about something that I didn't know existed until a few hours ago. And that's drained all of my mental energy. I'm going to have to go and have a lie down on the couch in a dark corner and recuperate.
Austin's _creation said sent Discord DM photo. Sadly, tolerances are off, and it's one of a few designs myself and Scott are testing.
Okay, before I go, I am going to launch Discord. Get off there. I'm going to do that so that you can't see what happens, because I don't know what's going to come up on Discord when I open it. Cable tie, you didn't miss anything at all. Nothing at all. Nothing has happened. Yes. Where are we? Yeah, so Austin said 3 hours from idea to first test. Yep. I'm not quite sure what this idea is yet. Verifying Discord. Because I haven't opened Discord for a little while, it does the thing where it downloads an update and then it downloads the next 5 updates. It's now downloading update 5 of 5. Installing. Blah, blah, blah. Starting. Discord changes so frequently. Just about every time I open it, I get a thing. Okay. Now, I assume that it's okay to show this, Austin, I hope. Scott says,
Scott Miller said, must keep Discord open at all times or it gets mad.
Yep. Which button do I press? That button. That's the one I press. Alright, so this is a render of something. What am I missing? Is this the test jig? Yeah. Thanks, Austin. Yeah. So is this for testing RJ45 things? Looks to me like the cable passes through here, the back of the socket sits into this location, and because each of these is slightly separate,
Austin's
this is like a spring.
Said RJ45 testing.
Yep. And Scott says it's the overcomplicated version. So it looks like a 3D printed spring mechanism. So it's a little bit like a building in an earthquake area where you have the whole building sitting on springs. And what that will do is give a little bit of wiggle room or play to each of the individual sockets so that they can adjust as they're inserted. That is very interesting. And it looks like it'd be hard to print, because do you need to have support underneath here? In which case you would have to get it out somehow. Whew, that is a complicated design, Austin. Anyway, Peter's hangry, so am I.
System notification. Peter is hangry 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. Okay, so I am going to go so that I can drink some more of my iced coffee, relieve my throat, rest my brain in a dark corner, and try to build up my energy reserves to be social again tonight, going to the Prusa meetup. So,
Unexpected Maker said, how disappointing is in the top of your Discord list.
in the top of my Discord list, where, yeah, it's in my Discord list. Okay. You can print in one go, but tolerances were off, says Austin. Okay. Oh, it isn't. It is. It is in my Discord list. I hadn't scrolled to the bottom. There is a very big list. Unexpected Maker is definitely in my Discord list. Yeah. Yes. Okay. My brain has faded out. I think my brain has checked out. So I'm going to put you all out of your misery by ending this stream. But thank you for coming along, and I will see you all next week, next Sunday, maybe.
Scott Miller
hope
said,
so.
thanks, John.
Thanks, Scott. And isn't in the top, should be number 1, says Sion. Yeah. Okay. I'm really going to go now. Thank you very much. It's always fun to chat to you and get everybody's ideas and perspectives on things and hear how you're going. So, go and make something awesome.